Imagine a fate so cruel, so utterly soul-crushing, that death itself would be a sweet release. For Christian nuns caught in the Ottoman Empire's relentless expansion, this wasn't just a grim thought. It was often their terrifying reality. Hey everyone, and welcome back to the channel. Today, we're delving into one of the most harrowing and often overlooked chapters of history, the devastating impact of Ottoman conquests on Christian women, specifically nuns. We're going to explore what happened when these women, dedicated to a life of faith and purity, found themselves facing an enemy that sought to dismantle every single aspect of their existence. It's a story of courage, despair, and unimaginable suffering. If you've ever wondered about the true human cost of empire building, or how the lives of the most vulnerable were shattered by historical forces, then you need to stick around. Because this isn't just about battles and political shifts, it's about the profound personal tragedies that echoed through centuries, leaving scars worse than death. To truly grasp the horror, we need to set the scene. Picture the late medieval period and the early modern era. The Byzantine Empire, once the mighty inheritor of Rome in the East, was slowly but surely crumbling. From its heartland in Anatolia, a new power was rising, the Ottoman Turks. Their expansion was explosive, driven by a powerful military and a fervent religious zeal. They pushed westward into the Balkans, southward into the Middle East, and eventually encircled Constantinople itself. For centuries, Christian communities across these regions had thrived. Monasteries and convents weren't just places of worship. They were centers of learning, charity, and culture. They were safe havens, especially for women who sought a life of spiritual devotion, often providing them with a degree of autonomy and purpose not readily available in secular society. These nuns, dedicated to God, lived lives of quiet contemplation, service, and strict adherence to their vows. But as the Ottoman tide advanced, these peaceful enclaves became front lines. When a Christian city fell to the Ottomans, the rules of engagement, as they were, often led to brutal consequences for the defeated population. While some cities might negotiate terms of surrender that offered a degree of protection, many did not, resulting in wholesale pillaging, destruction, and enslavement. It was in these moments of chaos that the most vulnerable, including nuns, faced their gravest challenges. Imagine the terror as Ottoman cannons pounded city walls, or when a breach was finally made. The air would fill with the shouts of soldiers, the screams of the dying, and the chilling sound of destruction. When a city fell by storm, particularly if it resisted fiercely, the conquering army was often given 3 days of plunder. Everything was fair game: homes, churches, and yes, convents. For the soldiers, a convent wasn't just another building. It represented a direct challenge to their worldview, a bastion of the enemy's faith. And the women inside? They were seen as spoils of war, property to be claimed. Unlike male clergy, who might be executed or enslaved for labor, the fate of nuns was often uniquely horrifying. Their vows of chastity, their dedication to a spiritual life, made them targets for a particularly cruel form of desecration. Historian sources, both Christian and Ottoman, even if sometimes biased, paint a grim picture. We hear of convents being raided, their sacred altars defiled, and the nuns themselves dragged out. The systematic destruction wasn't just about loot. It was about breaking the spirit of the conquered people. Destroying their holy places and violating their most revered women was a powerful message. Your God has abandoned you, and your way of life is over. It was an act of both physical conquest and spiritual humiliation, a double blow designed to crush all hope. So, what exactly did worse than death entail for these women? It wasn't always a quick, violent end, though many undoubtedly met that fate during the initial storming of a city. The true horror often began after the battle. Foremost was the violation of their vows. Nuns had pledged themselves to Christ, committing to a life of purity and devotion. To be forcibly converted to Islam, to be married off, or even worse, to suffer sexual violence, was to have their entire identity, their spiritual being, utterly annihilated. For a woman whose very existence was defined by her sacred commitment, this spiritual defilement was a torment beyond comprehension. It wasn't just a physical assault. It was an assault on their soul, a betrayal of everything they held sacred. Many nuns, along with other women and children, were enslaved. They were paraded through the streets, separated from their communities, and then sold in slave markets. Some might end up in domestic servitude, serving in Ottoman households. Others, particularly younger and more beautiful women, could be forced into harems. Imagine the sheer terror, the constant dread, of being a Christian nun, raised in quiet contemplation, suddenly thrust into such an environment. Their bodies were no longer their own, their faith a dangerous secret, and their future utterly extinguished. There are accounts, though often fragmented, of nuns enduring incredible psychological torment. Stripped of their habits, their haircut, their names changed. These are deliberate acts to erase their former identities. They were forced to watch their communities fall apart, their fellow sisters suffer, and their faith ridiculed. The constant threat of violence, the loss of freedom, and the agonizing guilt that many must have felt over their inability to maintain their vows all contributed to a profound and unending despair. Death, in many ways, would have been an escape from this living hell, a return to the God they had served. But for many, that escape never came. You might be wondering why these stories aren't more widely known, why they don't feature as prominently in popular history. Part of the reason is the nature of the historical record itself. The victors often write history, and while Ottoman chronicles detail their conquests, they naturally focus on the glory of their sultans and armies, not the suffering of the defeated. Christian accounts, often written by survivors or those in neighboring lands, were frequently suppressed, destroyed, or simply lost to time. Furthermore, the experience of sexual violence and forced conversion was, for many women, a source of immense shame and trauma, making them reluctant to speak about it even if they survived. These personal stories, so vital to understanding the human impact, often remained unspoken, whispered only in hushed tones, or simply faded into the collective memory of a traumatized people. The destruction of convents meant the destruction of their internal records, their histories, and the very voices of these women. Yet, fragments remain. Through letters, monastic chronicles, and sometimes even the accounts of Ottoman officials, we piece together a grim mosaic. We learn of convents burned, of nuns taking desperate measures to avoid capture, sometimes even jumping from battlements or choosing self-inflicted wounds over capture and dishonor. These aren't just isolated incidents. They represent a pattern of systematic dehumanization and violation that was an unfortunate but documented aspect of conquest during this era, particularly when religious lines were so starkly drawn. The suffering of these Christian nuns under Ottoman expansion serves as a stark reminder of the true cost of war and conquest, especially for the most vulnerable. It wasn't just about territory or political power. It was about shattering lives, breaking spirits, and erasing identities. Their worse-than-death fate wasn't just a physical end, but a spiritual and psychological annihilation that left an indelible mark on individuals and entire communities. Remembering these stories isn't about fostering resentment or historical blame in the modern sense. It's about confronting the full complexity of history, acknowledging the suffering that occurred, and understanding the devastating impact of conflict on human beings. It's about giving a voice to those who were silenced, ensuring that their unimaginable experiences aren't simply forgotten by time. Because by understanding the depths of human cruelty, we also learn to appreciate the resilience of the human spirit and the enduring power of faith, even in the face of absolute despair. So we've explored how the Ottoman expansion brought terrifying consequences for Christian communities, particularly for nuns. Their peaceful spiritual lives were shattered by conquest, leading to the desecration of their sacred spaces, forced conversion, brutal enslavement, and psychological torment that utterly destroyed their identities and vows. This systematic dismantling of their spiritual and physical being truly represented a fate many considered far worse than death. This is a challenging topic, but an important one to discuss. What are your thoughts on this often forgotten aspect of history? Share your reflections in the comments below. And if you want to explore more untold stories and overlooked historical events, make sure you hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell so you don't miss out on our next deep dive.